Okay, so activities. The alien child is going to spend his or her time differently than the child of the unbeliever. Deuteronomy 6:6-9 says this. We've heard it several times at the conference. Let's just sit under it one more time and see what we can pull from it. It says, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." That's interesting, isn't it? Because the author of Deuteronomy seems to think that there will actually be times where we sit in our house together. Seems to think there will be times where we walk by the way together, when we lie down together, and when we rise up together. This passage assumes a natural rhythm of the home that is bringing the family together versus spreading the family out. And I think that here we see a charge to evaluate with any schedule decision the cost versus benefit associated with it. So when my oldest child started high school, my kids went to public school all the way through. Stay with me, homeschoolers, it's going to be okay. They went all the way through, and when my freshman son started in high school, the high school counselor came out to talk to the parents, and he asked if we knew what the number one thing was that he saw children in the counseling office for at our high school. It's a big public high school, and I promise you, every parent in the room thought that he was going to say drugs and alcohol. And do you know what he said? He said depression and anxiety related to exhaustion and overscheduling. That was the number one thing that he saw. So that means that as parents of Christian children, or Christian parents of children who we are praying will become Christians at some point, we're going to make some hard decisions around how we're going to choose activities. We're going to do some math that other people aren't doing. So I know how this works, right? Like you have the 2-year-old, he's basically just learned to walk, and you hear that everybody's signing up for a gymnastics class, and so what do? You're like, oh my gosh, we got to do that. That's what everybody's doing. So you put him in the class. He's just learned to walk, so obviously a cartwheel is what is next. You pay whatever they want. Little Jimmy spends a semester out there toddling around doing whatever, and at the end of the class, well, about a week or two before, the coach is going to come up to you, and what is the coach going to say? You know what, Mrs. Wilkin, little Jimmy is showing real talent. I mean, I think there might be something here. I mean, he's really getting it. He's coming along great. But you know what little Jimmy's going to need? Private lessons. You know. And we're like, my little Jimmy? He's going to the Olympics? I knew it. I knew when he started walking, I could see. And then what do? You start writing the checks and devoting the time to it, right? When we get sucked in. Why? Because we've heard exactly what we're hoping for. And what we need to understand, like when you were a kid, were there as many activities to get involved in? No, my mom was like, go play with sticks. Don't burn anything down. There are so many things that our children can get involved in. Do you know why? Cash money, suburban influence, affluence, suburban affluence. People are making millions of dollars off of our desire to have a famous child. And we walk into it willingly. So we need to be a little discerning about the choices that we are making with regard to this. So there are some questions that you can ask yourself. You can ask yourself, is this an activity, or is our activity level something that is helping our family or hurting our family? And one of the things that I think parents miss out a lot on with this is they fail to recognize the collective effect of everybody's activities on the family as a whole. So we had 4 kids in 4 years. Can you imagine what my life would have been like if everybody was out there having 3 or 4 activities a week? We would never have been home. And that's kind of a key point, right? Because one of the things with activities that you have to keep an eye on is whether they're sabotaging the regular rhythms of the home to a point that we're not able to train our children as we ought to. Things like family dinner. Now, it's not that you might never miss a family dinner for an activity, but if family dinner is habitually missed or almost always missed, you're actually putting your kids into a risk category, people have told us. That families that sit down for family dinner at least 4 nights a week, their children are far less likely to get involved in drugs and alcohol and other risky behaviors. 4 nights a week to have family together at home. Check that out for a second. You're thinking of ways that you want to be countercultural. Family dinner may be the most countercultural thing that you could do. So when we're looking at which activities will we do, we have to weigh them by different measures than others' families might. Now, because we had 4 children so close in age, we had a rule. You could do one thing or you could do no things. One or none. Doesn't it sound fun to live at my house? And a lot of times, they would choose to do the one thing and then they might do nothing for a while. And I had one of the 4 kids who chose none every time. None, 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 none. And other parents are like, what's happening there? You know, are you gonna push him toward anything? And we're like, I don't think so. And so what would happen was I began to see this pattern. We would be somewhere and an adult would come up to him and they'd say, hi, Calvin, what do you do? Calvin does not have a profession. But this is what we do, right? Like do you play baseball? And Calvin's like, nope. Do you do gymnastics? And he's the 4th kid, right? So like we're not looking for more things to pay for at the point he comes along. He's like, I read books. He never took on one of these activities. And I think that we have bought into the idea that if your child isn't out there trying every single thing, maybe they won't turn into the fully formed person that they are supposed to be. But I have at least a sample of one to tell you that that's not the case. He ended up teaching himself the guitar. You know, he discovered a love of music. He's still an avid reader. He's a great kid. He's not an NBA superstar. But when I watch the lives of those people, I wonder why we ask that for our children at all. Okay, so we said one or none. That was our rule. You probably don't have to be that conservative with it because you may have fewer children. That's on you. You figure that out for yourself. But we have to be running these things through a different filter than other people. So does it impinge on our ability to be together as a family? So, you know, that whole thing about what do you do, little Calvin? If you've noticed, oftentimes in our families, everybody has their own sort of activity identity. So dad is a golfer. Mom sells essential oils, for example. Just guessing. Jimmy, and I'm good, by the way, but thanks. Jimmy plays baseball. Susie does dance, right? And everybody has this identity that revolves around the activity that they're in. But what's happening is because we have these activities, we're moving this direction from each other instead of moving this direction from each other. And as your children grow older, you're going to want them to sense that home is their primary place of belonging. You're going to want them to not feel like the soccer team is the place where they can share all of their deepest secrets. You want home to be that place. And so you're going to want them to be drawn there. You're not going to want there all the time, right? Amen? But you're going to want them to see the home as a place where they can come and be themselves. And you want it to be a place that you're spending a lot of time together. Activities are tough. So the other issue is that when you have multiple children and multiple activities, you tend to think, well, this is just, you know, what Jimmy is involved in, and this is just what Susie is involved in. But it's never that way, right? Like the things that we're involved in are always impacting everybody else who's in the family. And so we have to weigh sort of this combined cost because maybe Jimmy's practices during dinner, but someone's got to take him there. You know, or if Susie's on a travel team, we're going to divide and conquer and someone's going to go and be over here and the rest of us are going to be over here. And it's not that you don't do those things, but you're keeping a tab on what is the cost to the family as a whole. Why? Because the alien child doesn't get involved in activities the way that other children do. We talk about how quality time is something that we want with our children. And a lot of times when we're extra busy, we tell ourselves, well, yeah, but I have a lot of quality time with them, so it's good. But I think we all can acknowledge that the reality of quality time is that it is a function of quantity time. And so the more time we spend running apart from each other, the less chance that there is that we're going to have the stretches of time that are necessary for these times to bubble up where we have the important conversations. I could do a whole 45 minutes just on scheduling, but we're going to keep moving. Second, speech.